minority in parliament is demanding an investigation into how government, through the GNPC, agreed to acquire 70% stake in the South Deepwater Tunnel and another 37% stake in the Deepwater Tunnel Cape 3 Point. This deal was expected to cost the state $1.65 billion, but recently AGM has opted to relinquish its stake in the South Deepwater Tunnel block. Deputy Minority Leader Emmanuel Kofi Boah says there are still questions which must be answered and only an investigation can unravel that.
A lot of groups have called for investigation, and we support that call. The reason is because a company that has come to Ghana that buy this asset and has convinced officials of the state with the audacity to bring that agreement to parliament. Can you imagine that if we had basically indeed bought and exchanged money? If we did, then it means that today we will be talking about almost 1 billion plus that we had sold an asset that has no value. That's why we believe that that whole circumstances leading to Ake's proposal to sell that block must be investigated.
Emmanuel Kofi Boah says his side feels vindicated as they were opposed to the deal since its inception.
We warned the government, led by Nana Addo, that this asset, especially the AGM part of the asset, was valueless and risky. And we insisted that the valuation, you need to value an asset to make sure you know how much it is valued. And we insisted that that so-called valuation they've done cannot let the state buy that asset at that price. We warned them, we insisted, we spoke about the risk of the South Deepwater Tunnel block, and said that first of all, the block was 3,000 meters deep. The technology to develop that block does not even exist. So why will Ake, who wants to make money, sell that used a block to Ghana without proper valuation? The government insisted that they were going to buy it. We insisted that it was not of value. Thankfully, they said they came to see policy of that they were going to go and come back. Well, guess what? Less than a year and a half later, Ake has now said that that block has been relinquished. That is, they have basically given up on it to Ghana back. Can you imagine if we bought it? And we insisted that we can't buy it at that price. Now, we saw some newspaper articles saying that the NDC minority has been silent about the fact that now it turns out that a year later or 2 years later, Ake now goes back to say that that block that they wanted to basically dupe Ghana by selling to us for 1 billion, 1.65 billion, I mean half of that part of the block, they no longer want it and that they have relinquished it. That really vindicates the NDC minority.
Speaking on the deal on the AM show, Deputy Energy Minister Andrew Japamesa says the deal, the Ministry of Energy and GNPC's negotiations with Aker Energy has not concluded, adding there hasn't been any approval from Parliament for the deal or transaction to be consummated.
The approval that Parliament gave was for the Ministry of Energy and GNPC to go and negotiate with Aker Energy for a potential acquisition by GNPC in both the Aker and the AGM block. As far as I know, that negotiation has not been concluded.
Right.
And so to that extent, no definitive documents have been submitted to Parliament for consideration and approval to consummate the transaction. Obviously, within the confines of the law, which then says that when you execute a petroleum agreement, you have a certain time frame within which you need to do exploration. I believe it's 7 years. Within that period, there are obligations that you need to meet. And so the fact that you are having a negotiation for one party to potentially acquire a stake in those blocks does not under any circumstances derogate from you performing your obligations. And so if at the end of the exploration period, the transaction or the proposed transaction of GNPC's acquisition in the ACA and AGM block has not been consummated, but the point has reached where, because ACA and AGM themselves have not met their obligations under the petroleum agreement, they have to and have indeed indicated they are relinquishing that block. That then becomes an issue that people want to play political chaskili with.
You can go live to Parliament and speak with Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante, who has more. Kweku, how does the minority intend to push for these investigations they are demanding?
So, according to Emmanuel Amaku-Pipua, government should be interested in knowing exactly how and why government committed to dish out close to $1.65 billion of state resources to invest in these oil resources, and that ultimately it will not have been mirrored in the state's best interest. They fell short of specifically stating if they want, say, the OSP or the police or some state institution to conduct some investigations as to whether or not it's a corruption-related investigation or not. They have not said so, but ultimately they are throwing that argument to government to say that investigate this, because ultimately if this would have gone through, the state would have lost some significant amount of money.
We understand also that the House may be approving the nominations of recent appointees of the president. Is that happening?
So the main agenda on Parliament business today is the 3 financial revenues, the excise amendment bill. There's also the growth and sustainability levy, as well as the income tax amendment number 2 bill. These are the main things that Parliament is set to consider. Ultimately, government expects to get about 4 billion Ghana cedis annually if this goes through. That is the expectation. The minority are opposed because they think that it will overburden the Ghanaian taxpayer. But it will come as a side. The ministerial nominees, we've already seen Katie Hammond go on the floor, try and negotiate, try and lobby some of his colleagues on the minority side. And so that may come, but that is not clear yet. But the ultimate thing that will come to Parliament today is the 3 financial revenue bills, which government expects to rake in about 4 billion cedis. It is part of the conditionalities of that IMF bailout. And ultimately, this will be a numbers game if the minority do not play ball. The NPP have 138 MPs. Ordinarily, this should be an easy game for them, since it's by simple majority. But Sarah Adwoa-Sarpong, we do not know if she'll be in Parliament today, and another NPP MP who has not been around for some time now. That will leave each side with 136 MPs apiece. And when it goes down to a vote and there's a tie, that motion would have lost. And so the minority side are being called on by the majority side to put political consideration aside, join government to pass these revenue bills as well as pass the ministerial nominees when they do come to the floor.
Certainly something we'll be monitoring. Kweku Asante is our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. He will be bringing us more in our subsequent bulletins.